It's been decades since the joy of painting began mesmerizing us on PBS. And yet more and more folks are showing interest in painting happy little trees and almighty mountains, picking up palettes, beating the devil out of brushes. But it all started in the 1980s, our fascination with Bob Ross and his colors and canvases. This overlapped an obsession with another tool commonly found on American TV sets, and not just on painting shows.
The legendary Ginsu knife, the sharpest offer on television. But now there's Ginsu World Class, the finest knife in the world.
As long as we've got so many onions here, I'm going to show you one more trick, which is how to dice onions, because very often you get that. Holding your knife the same way.
That's not a knife. That's a knife.
Yep, back in the 80s, knives were in. But there was one blade-wielding warrior we could always turn to for our fix. And he didn't use his knife to slice through a tin can or menace teens at sleepaway camp. He used it to carve out an almighty career as a TV painter, finding all types of ways to pierce our hearts with joy.
Let's put in some beautiful colors. Little sap green, the yellow here and there. Ooh, that's nice. I like to paint with a palette knife. It just makes so many beautiful things happen. So this is a very simple way of making some nice mountains. This little knife, I like it because it sort of gets into all the little places here, and you can make all these little doers. Just all kinds of little things. You'll really make friends with your knife. You'll get to know that thing just like an extension of your hand. And that's when the fun really starts.
So where does Bob Ross's friend Mr. Palette Knife come from? To find out, we're gonna have to call long distance. Ciao, Eduardo! Oh, who's on the line? His daughter? Ciao, Elisa!
Buongiorno.
Buonasera.
Elisa Rosa Gastaldo, daughter of Eduardo, granddaughter of Mario. Mario started his own knife-making company, RGM, in 1961. Then he turned it over to his son.
Eduardo is the owner of the company. He represents the second generation who is running the family business that my grandfather started. He grew up in that environment, so he basically decided to go on with it. It was his own choice.
Would you mind if Eduardo told me his name, where he's from, and what he does in Italian?
In Italiano?
Yeah. I'd just love to hear it, and maybe we'd use it just to give an example of we're talking to somebody who mostly speaks Italian.
Vuoi parlare tu in italiano? Chi sei? Quanti anni hai? Da dove vieni? Sì.
Allora, sono Edoardo, il titolare della RGM. Io lavoro da 42 anni all'interno dell'azienda di...
Eduardo speaks Italian beautifully. Sadly, I don't speak a word of it. Maybe a few of the naughty words, but that's it. So I'm grateful that Elisa is here to help us communicate.
I actually have a dream to be a translator. I really like to learn languages. I love French. French is my love language.
Elisa's dad is scheduled to retire this summer, but he enjoys what he does so much that he's not really ready to step away.
It's something like passion and love mixed together, pushing us to continue the family factories.
A mixture of passion and love? Sounds like the perfect combo to make a Bob Ross palette knife.
And you can take the knife and smooth that, hold it in that angle. Look at that, look at that. There. That's fascinating to me.
Maniaggio is a small town tucked away in the northeast part of Italy. But the M in the company name doesn't stand for the town it's in. It stands for its founder, Mario, who realized in the late 1950s that there was a demand for high-quality technical products in the fine arts market.
How does somebody get into this business in the first place? How does somebody just say, we're going to make knives. People need knives, and we're going to be the people that make them?
After the Second World War, my grandfather worked as a knife producer. He basically made knives for cooking. Someone of the town asked him to produce some sort of knife that were flexible, that doesn't need to cut, but to use to paint.
The Rosa Castaldos are expert welders who make all the metal. Engraving tools, hammers, chisels, tweezers. But ultimately, palette knives became the biggest notch in Mario's belt. Today, RGM makes over 200 different types. 200!
My father has, I would say that he has a really creative mind. he begins with, I think, 12 different shapes. And then today we have, like you said, 200 different shapes. So I believe that each shape depends on the need of the artist. So maybe one artist, I don't know, a French artist maybe need a thin shape. And then we have the American artists who need a more detailed one. So it is based upon the needs of each artist.
But for artists who need a Bob Ross palette knife, for Eduardo, that took a bit of doing. And when he approached the folks from the Bob Ross Company at an art trade show in the 1980s, barely able to speak a word of English, it was time for Eduardo's bravery test.
What the heck? Be brave. Be brave.
Bob Ross is a brand that my dad has always known since the late 80s when he, for the first time, went to the US. He went into contact with the booth of Bob Ross, where he was captured by the white handle of Bob Ross.
In this series, I think I'm going to use this oval brush several times, show you some different things you can do with it. I like it. It's easy to distinguish. It has a black handle where other brushes have white handles. Oh, and that's the reason we've done this, so it's easy to tell.
Back then, Eduardo didn't have the machinery to handle this sort of sophisticated knife making, but his fascination with Bob's tools inspired him to raise his technological game.
He is very brave. He started traveling alone with no English, no money. So he basically went there to Bob Ross' booth and just introduced himself.
But he was brave. He was brave. You probably want to raise now.
Today, every inch of your beautiful Bob Rossi knife is put together inside the RGM factory.
Painting palette knife process begins with the iron, and then this iron is cut into shapes, different shapes, and then make it flexible. We have the welding process, and then we put together the handle and the blade, and we polish it.
Eduardo oversees the brightness of every blade, with a special finishing that he just can't share with us. A chef making that special sauce, but refusing us his recipe. Hey, not everyone is willing to share their secrets.
Now you know my secrets. I talk to squirrels and bunny rabbits.
Bob Ross's smiling face is stamped on the handle of each knife and packaged for shipping by a small staff of loyal Italian craftsmen, sent off to happy painters around the world to make mountains, twigs, and barns.
And if you can make mountains with this knife, then you can make roads and houses, stones, anything. Some of the earlier series, we painted entire paintings using nothing but the knife. And mountains will teach you how to make friends with it. And that's what you need. You have to make friends with the equipment.
Elise is still in college. She helps out with the business, but language is her thing. Does Eduardo expect her to step in once he steps away?
In qualcosa che ti renda felice.
He said that in the case I would not pursue the painting palette knife producer, he would like me to be whatever I want to be, just something that makes me happy.
The only rule that I adhere to in painting is that it should make you happy and you should enjoy it. If you comply with that rule, then how can you go wrong? There. Well, it is a big tree. I'll tell you what, let me mix up a little more paint. I think he needs a friend. You know me, I think everybody needs a friend.
Okay, now that we know how this bad boy is made, let's put it to work. Ooh, a package! From Italy! It's my very own Bob Ross palette knife! It's beautiful. E serie al settimo cielo. Now how the heck do I use this thing? I know. I'll ask Sassy Sue.
My name is Sue Scott. Born in Boonville, Mississippi, which you'll hear some of my southern slang come out, I'm sure. Grew up in South Georgia.
Certified Ross instructor Sue Scott moved further south to Crawfordville, Florida in the late 1980s, right as Florida native Bob Ross was reaching the peak of his powers.
Scary to have this much power that you can move mountains.
This is home. This is where I teach all my classes.
Everybody likes mountains, no matter if you live in Florida or Alaska. Mountains are still pretty.
If you have the desire to paint, I can teach you. And that's what I ask every student to bring to class. And they'll say, Well, I can't even draw a stick man. I said, fine, you're my perfect student. You'll listen to me. So that's the way I get them in. And that's just my love, just seeing the expressions on their face and what they're able to accomplish.
And if you're ever teaching, this will help you with students, is that you show them that there are no mistakes. You can fix everything that happens. And that really helps. It gets you over some of that fear. Well, we have a lot of fear when we first touch a big old blank canvas. But once you get over that, that's when you really begin to experience the joy of painting.
I wanted to do something different. I wanted to do something I enjoyed. I wanted to do something where I could make a difference in people's lives. And so, no lie, I dreamed this. I became a Bob Ross instructor.
And off you can go to any place that you want to be.
Why this dream came to me, I don't know. But I started praying about it. I said, God, you trying to tell me something? So I had no clue at that time that you could be an instructor.
Sue spots a Bob Ross painting book at the drugstore, brings it home.
That same week, some girlfriends of mine asked me to go to Daytona with them for the girls' weekend. I said, sure, that'd be fun. But in the back of my mind, I knew New Smyrna was not far from Daytona Beach. So while they're laying at the pool, I take the car, drive to New Smyrna, and I meet Nick.
If you're on the fence about painting like Bob, a trip to visit Nick Hankins and his wife Ada at the Bob Ross workshop will likely push you over the edge.
Wonderful guy. Oh, just wonderful guy. Before I even got the ball rolling on any of this, I had to know that whoever was going to teach me to be an instructor, I had to like them. And if they were going to teach me Bob Ross, they kind of had to be like Bob Ross. So fell in love with Nick, and I talked to him about it. And so that just even fueled the fire even more.
One thing I've noticed as I travel across the country doing demonstrations and teaching classes, only nice people paint. Everybody I've ever met that's a painter, they're super people.
So I come home, talk to my husband, and he says, do it. I said, really? And he said, do it. I mean, he's my number one fan. He encourages me in everything I do. And so I signed up for the floral CRI class, went down for 3 weeks straight. I said, if I'm in this, I'm just going to do it.
Sue does it. As soon as she gets certified, her biggest fan suggests they build a little studio for her in the barn space he uses to park his boat.
That's love. A man that'll pull his boat out of the pole barn and build me a studio. I know that man loves me, and I've got to do this.
Her first students are her grandkids.
They were my first little guinea pigs. And I said, if I can teach them, I can teach anyone, So they loved it. They just actually last week told me, Grandma, the friends came over and they have their paintings hanging in their rooms. And their friends said, no way you painted that. And I said, yeah, my grandma taught me. The first brush in my class that a student ever touches is either the 2-inch brush or the 1-inch brush. And that is to put their liquid clear or their liquid white on the canvas. The next thing they touch will be a palette knife, because I have them take the palette knife and do what I call a runway in their paint to flatten it out and wipe it off in between each paint. So they're already using the knife before we even go to the canvas.
And we like paintings that have a lot of life in them. Shoot, we want happy paintings. Happy paintings. If you want sad things, watch the news.
When we start to do a mountain, before I even let them load it with paint, I have them hold the palette knife and just waddle it in their hand. And when I hear a couple of them drop, I know that they're actually getting the light feel of the palette knife. Because men especially, they want to make it a screwdriver. And you don't do that. You've got to take it and use it in a particular way.
One of the big problems is that people put their finger on this blade when they're working with it. They take and stick that finger on there, and that finger applies a tremendous amount of pressure. I would suggest holding the knife with just thumb and forefinger, just very loose, and just sort of let it flop around in your finger.
I've even used the terminology that when you're going to the canvas with a knife, think about you've got a feather and you're pulling it down a baby's cheek just to see it smile. When I walk around in class when we're first starting to use the knife, I'll watch how they're holding it. You know, if they got this grip on there and I know they're fixing to go in for the kill, I back them off right away.
Right, like they're in West Side Story, ready to rumble.
Rocks, belts, pipes, cans, bricks, bats, clubs, chains, bottles, knives, guns. What a coop full of chickens.
When they dangle it, you sometimes hear it drop. Does that mean they actually drop the knives? Man, that's, I hope they're not wearing open-toed shoes.
Right. And when they do that, yes, you've got it. You've got it. You're understanding how light to hold it. If I don't hear a couple of knives drop before we get started using them, I have them continue to dangle it because I know they're holding on way too tight.
This is just the weight of the knife. It's sort of, in a way, think about maybe that the knife is really not even touching the canvas. The only thing it's touching is that little roll of paint that you've loaded on there.
Making mountains, you have to have a palette knife. I mean, it's essential. And before they even start putting their snow on, I'll have them take the tip of that knife and just cut down through the mountain, and it will make a line so they'll know where to pull their snow.
We can use, I'll use a small knife. Could use a big one or a small one. I'll take a little titanium white. And I think there's a little snow laying up here on these mountains, but I don't want a lot. I don't want a lot. So I'm just rubbing this a little. As you go down, let the knife turn so it gets wider. Figure out where you think might be a little snow on these, and just play some games here.
And if you thought this knife was just used for making mountains, think again.
Also for making water lines. The palette knife is ideal for it. Your water lines would be along your shore, and you'll cut back and forth to do your little water lines.
Cut across, get our little bit of paint right on the edge of the knife, and then let's go up in here and begin putting some water lines right over the top of this transparent water that we made.
Palette knife is also perfect for going in and putting the trunks in your tree.
And you could just take and scrape right through the paint and make it look like little sticks and twigs and all kinds of little things that live back in the woods there. That's where all my little friends live, the little rabbits and the squirrels and all those little characters.
And my students, they love that part. They said, this is so easy. We can do this all day long. But it's essential. You've got to have a palette knife. I've been even tempted to put one in my utensil drawer in the house because I just love it so much. And I'll use the terminology of, okay, it's like putting butter on your toast or icing on a cake. We mix our paint with a palette knife. We scoop up different amounts of our paint and drop it down on your palette to mix it up. You know, I'll reference, okay, we're going to get a macaroni noodle on the end of this, and we're going to put it into this Hershey Kiss pile, and we're going to mix it up together. So just so they know the amounts, something that they can relate to.
Bread, cake, Hershey Kisses, macaroni noodles. Man, am I hungry. But Sue's relatability in the classroom is key.
You don't take your brush and go into your pile of paint that you've squeezed out of the tube. You always take your knife and separate it so you're not contaminating your true color with another color.
This knife does it all.
It's a miracle worker. It's just really neat.
The palette knife, just one of the many tools we use to paint along with Bob, and to teach students the joy of painting just like him.
It's so rewarding to me. Some of them have tears in their eyes, saying, I can't believe I did this. And of course, they're hooked and they're back at the next class. In the time we're in class, it's almost like you get to hold the world in your hands. And with a canvas and paintbrush and paint, they're creating their world and you're just seeing them blossom right before your eyes.
And these tools aren't just ones you hold in your hands or apply to the canvas. They're inside our hearts, our minds, and part of a willingness to share the joy of creativity with others.
He takes you into a world that we all really want to live in. A loving, caring, nurturing, calm, relaxing world where we can create clouds, where we can create trees, where we can move mountains. You're drawn into the feeling that Bob portrays. And I sense it more now, especially since I'm teaching, than I did in the past just watching. Becoming a CRI and being involved in classes on a regular basis, I long for that work. If I go 3 weeks without painting, it's just like, okay, I gotta get back in there and teach again.
I think let's do a big old crazy looking mountain today that give you a lot of practice using the knife. And it's a lot of fun. Mountains are one of the best things going to give you practice with a knife. And if you make friends with this knife, there's just no limit to what you can paint with it.
The old clock on the wall tells me we've got another finished podcast episode. I want to thank my guests, Eduardo and Elisa Rosa Gastaldo and Sue Scott. 40 episodes, baby! We did it! Thank you. Thank you very much. This happy little episode was produced with help from James Shapiro at Jansen Media and mixed by Digital Sound and Video of Daytona Beach, Florida. You can support your local public television station and say thanks for giving us Bob Ross and the joy of painting. We want to see your paintings. Use hashtag #PaintLikeBobRoss. Bob Ross certified instructors are the only ones that know how to teach you Bob's world-famous painting method. Don't settle for second best. Find a local CRI at bobross.com and then click Take a Class. You got your own Bob Ross story to tell? We want to hear about it. Leave us a message at 866-FANBRUSH or send an email to podcast@bobross.com. And follow us on Facebook at The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. I'm Ron Scalzo. The Joy of Bob Ross is written and produced by me, Ron Scalzo, in partnership with Bob Ross, Inc. Bob Ross name and images are registered trademarks of Bob Ross, Inc.